Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. Zelensky believes that he won that round between Putin, Trump and himself. During the previous 24 hours he made lots of very interesting statements. Zelensky claimed he disrupted Trump's meeting with Putin and allowed Ukraine to receive Tomahawks. Sanctions have been imposed against Russian energy. There will be no meeting in Hungary without Ukraine, and so far no Tomahawks. That's the result. I think that's not bad. Zelensky commented on the results of his meeting with Trump. He also responded to a question about Tomahawks. Something new happens every day. I don't know, maybe we'll have Tomahawks tomorrow. I don't know. Trump, however, postponed the Tomahawk issue after his conversation with Putin. Furthermore, the President of the United States of America made lots of very interesting statements about the Russian Federation. He said that I'm glad he feels that way. That's good. I'll let you know about in 6 months from now. Let's see how it all works out. This statement about sanctions that were imposed against the Russian Federation and against the Russian biggest oil companies. So we'll see obviously what is going to happen in 6 months, because the sanctions will not start working today or tomorrow. With the real effect we're going to see just in 6 months. But telling the truth, during this period of time everything might happen, and probably and very very likely that the United States of America can remove these sanctions from the Russian Federation as well. Now let's switch on back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation along the line of combat contact. And first let's talk about the Kherson direction. If you remember, yesterday Russian sources published very interesting video from the southern part of the settlement. This is the video that we discussed yesterday, and here we can see several episodes of how Russians were planning and how Russians were implementing their offensive operation in the southern part of the city of Kherson. So as for this video, it's very difficult to understand what exactly the Russians managed to capture. They show a lot of episodes and some of them took place in the southern part of the city of Kherson, but the sources familiar with the situation stated that the Russians, as a result of this offensive operation, managed to capture this island. Once again, this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 23rd of October. So according to Russian sources, this island was captured by Russians by the morning of the 23rd of October of 2025. And pro-Ukraine resources published their own video, and this video took place in the city of Kherson in the Karabel-Vanna micro-district. Here we can see how Ukrainian soldiers were freely moving in this part of the city with guns without being afraid of any attack from the Russian side with FPV drones. So this is another confirmation that most likely these parts of the city is under complete control of the armed forces of the Ukrainian force of Ukraine. But at the same time, starting of this evening, the previous evening and this morning, we received lots of videos from this part of the city of Kherson, from the most, let's say, southwestern part, and here we can see how Russians intensify their artillery strikes in this area. It seems that this is exactly the part that the Russians are planning to capture within the next several days or weeks, and obviously the Russians are going to cross the river of Dnipro, and the Russians are planning to land infantry on this territory. So once again, if we take a look at the video that was published by the Russians yesterday, in the final part of this episode, a Russian drone was flying above this area. So this is very important detail. So the Russians were flying above this area trying to discover the situation, positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, and today we start receiving videos how Russians began bombing and attacking this territory. So telling the truth, I have no doubts that the Russians will try to cross the river of Dnipro, at least maybe not with the purpose to capture the entire Kherson, but at least to get a very powerful and very strong media victory. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Novopavlovka direction. During the previous night, we received additional details about the situation in this area. I would like to remind you that 2 days ago, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Ivanovka. Yesterday, this information was confirmed by neutral mappers and by pro-Ukrainian sources. And today, by the morning of the 24th, 24th of October of 2025. The pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see how exactly the battle for this territory was taking place. The Russians attacked this territory with artillery, with FAP as usual, with FPV drones, and then Russians launched infantry, sent infantry, and in this video we can see several episodes how Russians were raising the Russian flag in different parts of the settlement by the name of Ivanovka. So currently we have no doubts that the Russians captured the territory, that the Russians managed to cross the river of Volcher. Furthermore, several sources reported that the Russians continued advancing and improving their positions on this side of the river, and the Ukrainians are saying that the situation right now is very critical for the armored forces of Ukraine. So the Russians, it seems, are planning not just to cut the Novopavlovka pocket, the Russians are planning to move further deep inside of the Dnipropetrovsk region in the northwestern direction, first to the settlement in the direction of the village by the name of Mizhova, and then even further in the northwestern direction, maybe towards the settlement by the name of Pavlograd. So Ukrainians, according to information we have, were forced to fall back from these changes because they didn't expect this attack and they didn't expect that the Russians would succeed. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. As you can see, the situation is very difficult for the armed forces of Ukraine. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional videos, geolocations that confirm additional progress on the ground. And as you can see, based on the reports that we received, we adjusted the map. So once again, this is the situation by the end of the 23rd of October of 2025. Most of the territories to the south of the railways were colored under control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and by the morning of the 24th of October we got additional videos that confirm additional changes on the ground. So this is the video we're talking about. This video was published by the 68th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking with FPV drones Russians across the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. There are lots of episodes, some buildings were geolocated, and if we return back to map, one of the Ukrainian attacks took place exactly in this area, another attack took place to the north of the railway, so in this area. Based on this video, based on these two episodes, we have adjusted the map. Now we see that Russians control up to 80% of the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. Ukrainians control just 10%, and another 10% is considered as a gray zone or contested area, which most likely means that this territory is also under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, according to several pro-Russian sources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation continue advancing further in the northwestern direction. Currently, there are very heavy clashes for railways, for M30 and M32 roads, but the Russians are saying that they managed to block supply lines completely. So all these territories are already under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, which means that currently Ukrainians have just one road for supply and support. This we are talking about the Olympiyskaya Street, but you see that this is not the best option for the armed forces of Ukraine, because this road is located right in front of Russian positions. There are no places where Ukrainians can hide. There is territories completely observed by Russian drones, so the losses, if Ukrainians use this Olympiyskaya Street, the losses would be around 100%, so nothing can use this territory for any purposes. Furthermore, according to different mappers, the Russians also improved their positions in the settlement of Rodinska during the previous night. So this is the situation by the end of the, for example, 22nd of October, and this is a turning point in the battle for the settlement. By the end of the 23rd of October, we colored the entire Krasny Liman and most part of the settlement of Rodinska, and by the morning of the 24th of October, different mappers and sources clarified the situation in the most southwestern part of the settlement. So the Russians are tightening the news, and as when it's going to happen soon, Rodinska falls, this is going to be the end for the city of Pokrovsk itself. Some pro-Russian sources, very reliable sources, reported that the Russians issued ultimatum to the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. They gave them time till Monday or till 27th of October of 2025 to abandon their positions and to quit the city of Pokrovsk and the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. If they don't do this by the 27th of October of 2025, the Russians will encircle them without any chances for further evacuation. As for the area of breakthrough, during the previous 12 hours, we got video, published video, and we got video and geolocations. Indeed, the Ukrainians during the previous 48-72 hours managed to recapture positions on the territory of the settlement of Kucherov Yar. This video was published by Ukrainian sources. We can see lots of episodes when Ukrainians were raising flags in different parts of the settlement. We can see lots of episodes how Russian soldiers were surrendering to Ukrainians, and based on this video we adjusted the map and we colored the settlement of Kucherov Yar under complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine. The Russians were forced to fall back further in the southern direction. Now the Russians are trying to stabilize the situation on the line Shakhova, Zapovedne and Zatishek. So this is the territory where the Russians will try to hold their positions for as long as possible, while the Russians will try to finish the battle for the settlement of Shakhova. Furthermore, today several pro-Russian sources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians improved their positions in the northern part of the settlement, and the pro-Russian sources are saying that some units of the armored forces of Ukraine were caught in cauldron in the central and in the southern parts of the settlement. So when Russians finish the battle for Shakhova, Ukrainians will have no chances to force them to fall back from this area. This is going to be a very powerful foothold, and Russians will be able to develop offensive and to start everything from the beginning and to attack further in the direction of Dobropolye and further in the direction of the border between Donetsk and Kharkiv regions. And that's it for today. For the short video, Military with Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.